All right, so let me just double check to see if it's on. Don't you can hang up. Mm.
I see it.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. This is your girl, Dr. K. So sorry, we had some technical difficulties earlier. I already told my guest that she must have something powerful to leave with you guys because we have been in a fight both physically and technically. Okay, and so now we are live, and we're going to get started. So sorry for all of the technical difficulties, but I think we are ready to rock and roll. So I have with me tonight a special guest. She doesn't need a formal introduction, but I will tell you that she is Minister Sierra Joy Everett, and she is my daughter, mine and Overseer Curtis' daughter. She is a graduate of Westchester University with her bachelor's in psychology. And of course, she did it with honors. And so we're so excited tonight to have her on our live. Again, please forgive us. We were there earlier and then had some technical difficulties. People couldn't see the live and all of that good stuff. Technology is wonderful when it works. So, Sierra, so happy that you are joining us tonight.
Hi, everyone.
So let's just get right into it. Um, and tell me a little bit about why, when I asked you to do this, you were so excited and willing to do it. And can you tell me a little bit about what that was about for you?
So when I was presented the opportunity, I decided to, pursue it because anxiety and depression, is something that I struggled with growing up. And I feel as though it's an important topic to discuss, because so many people are experiencing anxiety, depression, um, and I feel as though sometimes we can lose sight of what those terms mean when they're used loosely. And so I think, talking about anxiety and depression and just bringing awareness to those topics is important, um, overall, but it's also important for me because it's something that I did experience.
Awesome. So let's just say we want to let everybody know that this month is Suicide Awareness Month. And this is why we decided to do a live on this topic, because as we know, suicide is a sensitive topic, but it is a topic that we know is out there more often than we like to admit. But with this being Suicide Awareness Month, we felt it was fitting to do this candid conversation. So, Sierra, you mentioned when you were younger, this was something that you struggled with. Can you tell us about the struggle?
Well, for me, I experienced, I want to say, anxiety and depression since I was like 14, all the way up until like maybe 19, 20. And during that period, I experienced isolation, lack of, interest in activities, just constant sadness and constant anxiety, and the smallest things would give me anxiety, especially when it came to my health, and the smallest little twinge, I had to go to the hospital and I was about to die, and all of the things. And depression for me was just came with a lot of insecurity. It came with a lot of, you know, not feeling wanted and just not really having a lot to say. I was very like emotionless. I didn't really feel a lot of things, and that's what it was like for me.
Okay. So one of the things I know we talk about sometimes is how you were handled during that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just a moment of transparency. I'll admit that as a mental health therapist, I would always say that when I came home, I didn't want to be a therapist. I wanted to be mom and I wanted to be a wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when going through that period of time for yourself, I know a lot of times I would kind of press you and I would kind of say, you know, come on, Sierra, get up, get out the bed, take a shower, yada, yada, yada. Or with the social anxiety, I was constantly saying to you, okay, go ask X, Y, and Z, right? And there was a time when you said to me, Mom, do you think this is how I really want to be? And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I had to really think like, no, people with depression, they don't want to be depressed, but when it hits, they can't function or they can't move or they can't, you know, it's almost crippling, right?
Right.
So can you tell us about what it was like having me as a mom where you sometimes felt like I didn't understand?
I wouldn't word it like that, but I get what you're saying. You were a great mom, but I know we even had a discussion a couple months ago that, you know, there was so much happening, I guess, in your life at that time that I was depressed. And so, you know I don't ever really see it as you didn't want to be there. I think you just had a different perspective of, you know, life because of the things you had gone through. But anyway, to answer the question, I think for me, and I hope I'm speaking for a lot of others who experience anxiety and depression, is that, you know, what we really want the most is someone to, you know, listen and, you know, sit with us in those moments and to embrace us and to acknowledge and to understand us, to not always have a resolution, you know, so to speak, or always have a quick fix to something. Because a lot of times people will say things like, it's going to be okay. And, you know, things will be better and, you know, all of the things. But I think sometimes it's just presence is all that is needed. You know, just being present with someone, just sitting with them in those moments and, you know, just, you know, being there. And for me, I will say that, there is a deep connection for me between, you know, the mental health and spirituality. And so just for a reference, is like, if we think back to when Job had lost everything, it says that his friends sat there with him. They just sat there with him. And sometimes that's all you need, is just people who will sit there with you and just embrace you and, you know, experience those moments with you, instead of, you know, trying to fix everything and, you know, give you a bunch of reasons as to why you need to get up and change your mind and change the way you think and all of the things. And so I think just, you know, allowing people to be who they are and sit with them in those moments and not trying to change their mind about what they're going through is important.
So that's a good point, because we always talk about, and I know I always talk about just I'll say the ministry of presence, right? Just being there, just being available, just being there, especially, you know, you're referencing that in terms of depression or any type of mental health that is debilitating, right? Oftentimes I talk about it in terms of grief, just being there, right? A lot of times people are fishing for things to say.
Right.
And what they don't realize, and that's because a lot of times human nature, people are uncomfortable with silence, right? When you're silent or when you're not saying anything, the narrative is that something's wrong, right? That's just not. I'm supposed to say something to make this situation better. But I tell people all the time, sometimes it's just the your presence is what can make all the difference, right? I know for me, when I'm going through things, when and mine is not necessarily depression, but anything I'm going through physically, right? If I know last year I had knee surgery, right? And for me, it was just the presence. Like I didn't really want a whole lot. People didn't have to bring me a whole lot. Food was something that we had prepared well in advance, and we're a family that don't really eat a lot of leftovers, so we didn't need a lot of food per se, right? But, just people, the people that came just to be here, right? Just to make me laugh, or just so that I wasn't home alone, right? That meant the world to me, right? But a lot of times people don't realize that you don't have to come bearing gifts. You don't have to come with a whole bunch of stuff. Just your presence, right? And so I'm glad that you brought that out, because that's important. And a lot of times that's what's missed, right? Look at the link between a person's depression and they actually make the decision and follow through in their lives, or death by suicide, is the link of presence that was missing. People say, well, what did I miss? How did we get here? And you didn't necessarily miss anything, but what was missing was time. Taking the time to check in, taking the time to say, I see you, taking the time to say, or to just be there in the event you wanted to say something. So, that's a very good, I'm glad you brought that out, and I'm glad that you are able to help us in that area, because that's definitely an area that support people. I say to support people to improve in. Us being able.
And I also want to add that, like, I think there's a balance to presence, and I don't want to feel like I'm like contradicting myself, but I feel like there's a point where someone can be overdoing it as well. Like, if I'm telling you I'm depressed, that doesn't mean, go hide all of the knives. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, sometimes doing the extra stuff can also, make it worse, or, but not being there at all is also just not, helpful as well. And so I think, finding that balance of just like showing up for what the person needs and allowing them to, experience what they're going through, and just being there to acknowledge it, and not, thinking or coming up with strategies in your mind to help the person, but actually just meeting the person where they are, and, whatever it is that they're going through, just being there to help them, and, just being a shoulder to cry on, and a listening ear, and, someone to hold type of thing.
So, Sierra, one of the things that, and you're bringing up a lot of good points, because you said, just doing the most, right? Come over and somebody comes in there, they're there to try to encourage you, and then they just end up doing the most, right? One of the things that, as you have heard me around the house on many platforms, I often say there's a thing that we miss when we are really trying to be there for other people. And that thing that we miss is we don't ask the question.
Right.
We don't ask. I've even gotten to a point now when clients call in, my question is, how may I serve you? Right. Because sometimes they just want to talk to somebody.
Right.
If I go and I start talking about, are you doing insurance or private pay? They wasn't even trying to go that far. Right. So I asked the question, how may I serve you? And that is something we just don't do.
Right.
We just don't do. Now I'm gonna say something, and I don't really know everybody that's watching, But as you know, we had a major loss this year. My mother, your Nana, and it was so, we can laugh about it now, but at the time, everybody that showed up with chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Now they may have came with biscuits and chicken and biscuits, or chicken and sides, or chicken and whatever. And I think about the third day, I was like, if I see another piece of chicken, I'm going to just start clucking, right? Because the last thing we needed was more chicken, but it was literally everybody that came with chicken. Now, we're not ungrateful, but after a while, we just couldn't eat all that chicken. And I was saying, can we give some of it to the neighbors, and can we take some across the street? The lady across the street got a bunch of kids, or whatever the case may be. And it wasn't that we weren't grateful. We were grateful. We were so had so much gratitude for people taking the time to do that. But nobody asked, like, what do y'all need? What can we bring? How can we serve? Right? Everybody just assumes. And one of the things I try to bring out with my with teaching about grief, and when you're going to be there for somebody, you're going to visit the sick and shut in, ask the question. Right? For us, we all have changed our eating habits, right? So we're not expecting other people to know that. But if you're going to come, or if you're going to go to a person to be there, to really be there and meet them at the point of their need, ask the question.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, we don't want to ask, right? I'm a firm believer that just ask the question, because of course, the things you can't go wrong with is water and maybe plasticware and that kind of stuff, paper products. But when it comes to food, ask the question, because everybody now is being more health conscious, right? So if you have 5 people show up with fried chicken, you can't. That's not health conscious, right? And so what I hear you saying is, when a person comes for presents, ask the question, right? You may have needed during that time. I'm trying to think. You may have needed help with homework. You may have needed help with, I don't know, getting yourself together. I think about during the times when I know your depression was really heightened, as well as others in our family, was at the height of my illness, right? And as we talked about it later, one of the things, or some of the things that you all said you needed, was somebody to just come and make sure y'all were okay. Everybody was hyper fixated on me and maybe asking daddy, but a lot of times you guys felt like you were missed in that process. Nobody asked, right? So we have to how they say now, normalize asking the question. Normalize asking people, how can I be of service? What can I do? How can I help you? Right? Oftentimes people say that they text me, and I have said it publicly. If you're trying to check on me and see how I'm doing, don't you text me, because I can't stand texting. I have assimilated to the world of technology and texting, but to actually check on me and see how I'm doing, pick up the phone and call me. Right? So that's who I am. Somebody else might say the complete opposite. Don't call me. I don't want to talk. Text me. But the only way we would know is if we ask.
And I want to add, like, even when it comes to that, I think, when it comes to supporting someone experiencing anxiety and depression, or suicide ideation or thoughts, I think it really just takes someone who understands, who gets it. Because even in, asking, sometimes I may not know. Like, a lot of times people would say, well, what is it that you need? Or y'all would say, what's wrong? And it's like, I don't know what's wrong, right? Like, I'm just sad today. Like, I'm just crying. I'm just upset. I'm just, I don't know what's going on. And so I think more than asking, it's knowing that even when I don't know what's wrong, someone is still going to stick around. Because a lot of times people will say, what's wrong? And then when I say, I don't know, they walk away. Like, as if it's like, oh, I don't want to do this no more, right? Like, once you ask what was wrong and I didn't know what was wrong, then now you don't want to be here no more. And it's like, well, I mean, I just don't know what's wrong. It's not that I don't want you here or that I don't still need your presence, but I don't know how to answer that question. And so I think when someone is experiencing, depression, and all of the things, it's just knowing that someone won't give up on you and that, you're not, super different, or that nobody doesn't want to be there for you, or that no one wants you. Is just, being embraced and just sitting there with them type of thing.
So let's talk about that, because a lot of times depression and loneliness, and when people actually cross over to actually take their life,
Mm-hmm.
is because of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is, just because you don't know what's wrong, or just because you can't put a label to it, doesn't mean you want to be isolated.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I go back to when Whitney Houston, with the story about Whitney Houston, and as talented as she was, as dynamic as she was, when I look at her and I look at her life, she was definitely lonely. She felt I would say that in some parts even felt betrayed, because as long as she was at the top of her game, everybody was around, right? But as she started to slip into some not so good things, there was a falling away, right? When in watching her story, even her father, I would say, betrayed her, because he was initially, I believe, her manager, but then started spending all her money. But anyway, when she passed away, then everybody was coming out the woodworks. Oh, she was this. She was such a sweet person. She had such a good heart. She had this. She had that. And the first thing I thought was, where was everybody before it got to this point?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did people tell her how talented she was? Did they tell her how they admired her? Did they tell her how, they looked up to her, or whatever the case may be? But that didn't necessarily happen prior to. But once she was gone, then everybody came out the woodwork. And I wanted to highlight that, because when we're talking about people who actually take their lives, who actually are successful with death by suicide, there's a period between what they were feeling and when they actually decided to go all out, to go force, right? What happens in that period? Are we so busy with our personal lives that we don't see the person? Are we so entwined or intertwined into what's going on with us that we don't recognize that this person right in our midst is hurting? And so when you talk about, that isolation, how did you come through that?
I think for me, it was, I think it was very complex. Isolation for me was very complex, because some of the isolation was my personality. Like, I was, I am a laid back person. I'm a reserved person. I definitely prefer to be by myself than, interacting with people. But then there was this layer of the depression where it was like, okay, that's also keeping me isolated. And so I think it was just like this constant tug of war of like, okay, today I want to be here by choice, but the next day I'm here because of the depression. And so it felt, never ending. But at the same time, I think there were moments where I wanted someone to see that, because even then I was a child. So some of the things that I went through, I did not necessarily know how to come and say, you know, this is what I'm going through. And so there were times where I just wanted someone to see that in me and say, okay, I know what you're going through. I know what it is that you're experiencing. Here I am. And, you know, I'm being present and, you know, not looking at me any different or passive or lazy, but saying, okay, this is something that she's going through, and, you know, feeling like someone is just sitting there with me. And so for me, isolation was complex because some of it was who I actually was, and, you know, again, other parts were the depression. And so yeah.
So you bring up a good point, because and I want to just put a pin here for a minute. When people are depressed and they're laying around, they can't get motivated, they can't do things, we are quick to label it as laziness.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought out a good point by saying it's not laziness. Some
Mm-hmm.
people just cannot get themselves up and motivated and on to the next task. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that said, and I want to come on this side of the fence, because if your depression is that severe, then you definitely need to get into some type of treatment, right? Because that can be treated and it can be helped, right? But a lot of times people don't want to seek the treatment. They don't want to go to treatment. And so it just perpetuates, it just continues. And so I want to encourage, if anybody out there is listening tonight and you have recognized any of the signs that Sierra has talked about in yourself, please seek help. Please seek help. It is tons of help out there, right? I know some excellent therapists in my network that if you didn't want to come see me because maybe you know me or too close or whatever, I can always refer you to somebody. But we need to really push the idea of seeking treatment. I'm often in my sessions saying to my clients, what would you do if right now I had a heart attack and we was on the screen? And they all say, you know, oh, I would call 911, or I would call to have somebody come to you. And I'm like, exactly. So the same thing we would do in a physical crisis is the same thing we should do in a mental crisis, a mental health crisis, right? But we tend to ignore the mental health crises by labeling it, as you said, lazy, or they just trying to be avoidant and all kinds of stuff. No, mental health is real. Depression is real. I want to talk about some of the types of depression. One that people may start realizing within the next couple of weeks, and that is seasonal depression, seasonal affective disorder. It really, the acronym is SAD, right? It really is a real type of depression when the nights are longer, the days are shorter, it's chill, the air is chillier, and people are hibernating more so, right? And it's during those times that they feel low, that they, you know, are feeling not as vibrant as they were during the summer months, right? And I'm often telling people, yes, and a lot of times people don't realize it is a real type of depression. It is a real diagnosis. So let's not just sit on it and saying, oh, you know, it'll pass, yada, yada, yada. No, the moment you feel it, you can seek help. Postpartum depression. Now, Sierra, you don't know about that, but women who have given birth, right? Postpartum depression is very real. It's alive and it's doing well. And guess what? It can last. Don't think that, oh, my baby is 6 months, I'm not dealing with postpartum. Yes, you are, right? It can last up to a couple years after giving birth. So we have to stop ignoring that. And I want to just admonish family members, spouses, when you're the mother of your child is off and you see them not able to regulate, 9 times out of 10 they are in postpartum. Okay. Bipolar, right? People who are bipolar and they have these manic episodes. 1 minute they real high, the next minute they real low. Listen, better not play with it, because A lot of people get hurt ignoring those signs. Okay. Major depressive disorder. Okay. These are all different types of depression. And I've heard people say, well, I thought it was just a phase. No, it's not a phase. Another one that's common is situational depression. That's what I had, right? And that's what a lot of us had in our household was depression based on the situation that we were going through, based on the health challenges, right? And so I shared with someone today, situational depression is real. So, when you have a lot of things going on, there are major changes in your life, major changes in your household, maybe a job change, whatever the case may be. Finances have changed during COVID, whatever. People go through situational depression. Okay. So I just wanted to highlight a couple. Of course, that's not all, but I wanted to highlight a couple, and just to let you know that if you're feeling any of those symptoms, it is real. It's not in your head. It's not something that is a phase. It's real, and we want you to seek treatment for it. Now, I gotta go here because this is my mantle, is bridging the gap between faith and mental health. And understanding that when we're dealing with Christians, a lot of times they feel like all I gotta do is go to the altar. No, because if you were having a heart attack, you would not just be laying on the altar. You would want to see a cardiologist. And so mental health in church, mental health in ministry is alive and doing well from the pulpit to the door. And we cannot keep hiding the fact that it exists. Some of these pastors and bishops and apostles and chief apostles and archbishops and all of the different titles, whatever title you want to give it, some of them are dealing with depression. Some of them are dealing with anxiety. Some of them are dealing with some other type of mental health challenge. And guess what? I'm going to say this, okay? And I've said it in the past. When they lay hands on you and they are not well, when they lay hands on you and they have not been treated for their trauma, that is an impartation. So now, not only are you carrying your stuff, you're carrying their stuff too. And this is why as leaders, we got to be healed. We have to see our healing as priority because we're responsible for everybody that we infect with our stuff. Okay. So Minister Sierra, you talk about how, early in your life as a teenager, you suffered with all of this. Tell us where and maybe you can't actually pinpoint it, but at what point did you see yourself kind of coming out of that and seeing light at the end of the tunnel?
Like I mentioned earlier, I really can't. I don't remember if it was this one because we had the other one, but I want to mention again, like for me, there is a deep connection between mental health and also spirituality. For me, I think well, I'm gonna just say it like this: depression and anxiety, or those experiencing mental illness, is such a tender place to be. It's like a sensitive place to be. It's like, someone doing too much can make you sad. Someone not doing enough can make you down, like put you down. And, so many different things that I feel like the only one who truly know how to hold a heart like that is God. And so for me, it wasn't until I came to him that I was able to, experience the gentleness and the presence and all of the things. And so not to say that there aren't people out there like that, but because someone with depression may be isolated, they're not able to, experience those type of people or come across those type of people. And so for me, it was, I am in a tender, sensitive, broken place. And God was the only one that knew how to hold my heart in that season. And so once I came to him, it really unfolded, so many things. And I started to see the truth of, you know, mental health. And I think when I was experiencing anxiety and depression, I just thought normal people walked around with joy and happiness all the time. And then when I, you know, came to God and basically was healed, it was like, oh, you're still gonna have sad moments. You're still gonna have moments where you're down. You're still gonna have moments where you're anxious. Like these things will never just fly off the radar and never come back. But it's, you know, managing those emotions and, you know, just being more aware of what truth looks like, I guess, when you're talking about your mind and the emotions that you experience and all of the things. And so again, for me, it wasn't until I came to um God and, you know, allowed him to heal me and all of the things. But I also feel like you should still seek the help from like a therapist or, you know, treatment, I should say, because there are times, I think for us, we have to know that like we're getting the help and that, you know, we're allowing things to unfold for us so that we can understand more of what it is that we're going through. And I think the two together is like, you know, true healing. I don't think any one by itself, you know, but both of them together, I think is important.
Absolutely. So I wear a t-shirt. I didn't make it. It was I ordered it, and it says Jesus in therapy, right? Something to that effect. Therapy and Jesus. So basically what it's saying is we need both, right? Again, you know, I have a cardiologist. I have Jesus, right? And I believe that Jesus is my healer. But he gives the cardiologist wisdom on how to get me to that healed place. And it's the same thing with therapists, right? God gives wisdom to help get us to that place of healing, right? And here's the thing: when you go see a therapist who is a Christian, you get the benefits of both worlds. I tell people all the time, my advantage is the Holy Spirit. So even in therapy, there are times I'm listening, but I'm also discerning, you know, what a person is not saying, because oftentimes what's presented is not the core of the issue, right? And once they tell me they're a Christian, that's it. That's all she wrote, right? Then I can implement my advantage, the word, to say, you know, God wants you healed. He doesn't want you in this place. And so I can say that as I watched your journey, having an inside seat, you have definitely matriculated and matured to this beautiful blossom flower that we see today. There are still times that you like, I ain't got time, I don't want to hear all that, you know. But I see that you handle it with much more grace and poise, right? There's a sensitivity that you have now that you wouldn't have had you not gone through that. And that's another thing I want to highlight. You know, a lot of times we're going through things and we don't realize that we're going through it so that we can help somebody else.
Right.
And so we can't despise the process, even though it may seem difficult at the time.
Right.
Now, I want to highlight one thing you mentioned. What was it? I just thought about it too. That's being over 50, the brain fog. But you know, I just would say that, you know, you have definitely walked this process and shown and have shown what it looked like going through it, and now on the other side what it can look like. Oh, I know what it was. You were saying about the normalcy, right? When you've been a person who's been depressed so long, when you start to feel better, that seems like the abnormal.
Yeah.
Because all you know is being down, bad, not wanting to do anything. But when you start to normalize and your emotions start to balance out, it's like, okay, something wrong with me. Something wrong with you now is that you're learning to balance out. And, you know, your norm is no longer, you're realizing that what was your norm is really not the norm.
Right.
And so that's important, you know, and I wanted to just recap and come back to that because a lot of times we see that in therapy sessions where, especially if somebody's on medication, they stop taking the medication. Why? Because they say, oh, I feel better. I feel, you know, I feel I can do all of this stuff, but they don't realize it's because of the medication that they're balancing out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, thank you for bringing that point out. Minister Sierra, ma'am, this is something that, how can I say, you know, on the other side of depression, let's look at what people may be thinking or feeling when they actually do decide to take their life. You know, we have a saying that jumpers never tell and tellers never jump, right? So a person, and all that means is that when a person is constantly saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do something to myself. I'm gonna take my life," you know, we have to respond to it as if it's serious. But sometimes they're doing that for attention, right? But it's the person that everybody thought was good, and then they turn around and hear that, oh, this person is no longer here, and this is what happened. Can you talk about what is going through their mind at that point?
Yeah, so for me, I was someone who like had, you know, thoughts and just like not really wanting to be here any longer. And for me in those moments, again, I think it goes back to like the sensitivity I spoke about earlier, is that those who are experiencing depression, there's this level of sensitivity where it feels like it will never get better. And so I'll put it that way. It just feels like, you know, I can never win, that this box is something that I'm never going to get out of because of how sensitive the heart is in those moments. And I think people are just wanting to escape that sensitivity of like, you know, if I do this, I'm depressed. If I do this, you know, I'm depressed. If I, you know, and then it's just like not really knowing what's going on. It's like I'm definitely, I think people start saying like, I'm definitely not going to get out of this box because I don't even know what's going on. Like I can't even tell you what it is that I'm experiencing. I don't even know how to, you know, put it into words to actually seek the help that I need. And I also want to say like, I think that term too can also be it's just like we're just very sensitive in those moments, because even the term like seek help can make it seem like, oh, I'm crazy and something wrong with me. And you know, we're just super sensitive in those moments. And I think again, that's why I said presence is important, and not wanting to change someone's mind, and you know, telling them things that they already know is like, that doesn't really help the situation. But being there to listen, being present, you know, being a listening ear, just holding them in those moments is just all that they want. And I think for those who do end up taking their lives is just that box of sensitivity that they cannot escape, and that they, you know, don't feel strong enough to escape. They don't know who to turn to, who to run to. They don't know how to explain what it is that they're going through. And they're just so, you know, broken, even if they're not consciously aware of it. It's just this sensitivity of like not knowing what I need and not knowing how to express my needs, and then not knowing who to turn to, and then, you know, just all of the things. And I think there's just so many dead ends on so many levels. It's just like everywhere I turn, I can't escape it. And so they just feel as though the only escape is, you know, taking my life type of thing.
So what you're saying in essence is that it's not an act of selfishness. It's
right.
not, because at the point of that desperate
Mm-hmm.
they're not even thinking about all of that, right?
Right.
Based on what you explained, is that the thought process is, how can I escape what I'm through, right?
Yeah, right.
Because they don't understand anyway, right?
Right.
So a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, that was just an act of selfishness," but it's not. You know, we, those of us who have never gotten to that place, we don't understand that thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so what you're explaining is that it is a thought process of how can I just escape all of these unknowns.
Mm-hmm. And might I add, like sometimes the thing we're trying to escape is not even people, it's ourselves. It's
Right.
it's the insecurity that we feel about ourselves, the thoughts that we're saying to ourselves, the feelings we have toward ourselves. And so I think a lot of times it's not even about people. Like if we had a good sense of self and then we had, people, we would do anything for the people. We would stay for the people, right? Like, but it's just us trying to escape ourselves is the problem, because you can't escape yourself. You get what I'm saying? Like I could have all of the support in the world, but if I don't feel good within myself, then, that may never, help me. All of the support may never help me. And so sometimes, or most times, it's their self that they're trying to escape. It's when everyone is sleeping and you're in your room by yourself. Those are the moments where, where things are the most, I don't know how to put it, the most dark, I should say. Is like when no one else is around, those are the moments where you're constantly repeating to yourself certain things, and you're just feeling the insecurity and you're scared to basically be around people because you don't want them to, I guess, bring that insecurity out. And then it's just so many things, and then we're trying to hide. And I think that, like, most times before someone actually reaches that point of taking their life, they've tried so many different things. They've, tried to escape so many different ways. And when they find that they cannot escape it, or that they cannot run away from themselves, they feel as though the best way is to just take their life, And so that's why I said it's just a sensitive place to be when you're in those moments and when you're experiencing depression and suicidal thoughts and all of the things. Is just a very sensitive experience.
Thank you for that. So I just want to pause real quick and ask everybody that is listening if they can like and share this conversation that we're having. This is a needed conversation, and so it's needed in society, it's needed in the kingdom, and we want to get it out there as much as possible. So do me a favor, if you can like and share, encourage your people to get on. We're just about finished, but they can get on now and then catch the replay. If anybody has any questions or any comments that you want us to highlight, please put those in the comments as well. So we do have a comment where someone said they didn't realize situational depression is a real thing. It is real. It is real. And guess what? It needs to be treated just like anything else. Okay. I went through situational depression at several points in my life. One was when I became ill and the whole trajectory of my family and the finances changed. There were days I was just depressed because I felt like I was letting my kids down. And, I had to work on that. I had to deal with that because this wasn't something I asked for. It was something that happened. And I must say my children were true gems because they were saying, and Sierra, you may even remember saying this sometimes, Mom, we would rather have you than to have a new pair of sneakers or new whatever, right? And so although they were saying that, it didn't help me, right? It was the guilt that I was carrying. And so I had to work on it. When just recently, when I was going through all of the headache and drama around my mother's illness and then her passing with my sister, depression was, there were days I would just cry and I didn't even feel like dealing with it. Because again, Sierra, one of the things that you mentioned, I just wanted it to be over. So it was like, how can I avoid it? Right. Well, it wasn't something I could avoid, but thank God I had my therapist during that time and she really worked with me and helped me to get through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important to recognize that, okay, something is off. Now, you may not know what to call it. Something is off. You're not feeling like your normal self. People who have had complex grief, just loss after loss after loss after loss. Yeah, you're going to go through some type of depression. And it's not something to be ashamed of. Okay. It's something I often tell people when, I go out into ministries and I'm bridging the gap to help people realize there's nothing new under the sun. This stuff ain't new. Jesus went through this stuff. He went through it. That's why he walked the earth so he could experience what we experience. And you don't think on the cross he was experiencing some type of depression where it's like, God, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's a cry of some type of mental distress, right? And so we don't have to feel ashamed. We're not making this stuff up. This stuff has been around. The difference is that, when our forefathers and our parents and grandparents was dealing with it, they didn't know how to get treatment. They didn't know what to call it. The difference is we're more educated, so we know what it is. We know what to call it, so we know how to seek help. That's the thing. It's nothing new, right? So, Minister Sierra, I want to thank you because you.
Wait, Kayla has a question. She said, "What about those who fully function through depression and thoughts of suicide? What type of support would that individual need? Because a lot of people may not respond to depression with isolation or withdrawal."
Okay.
Well, I think depression looks different for everyone. Like, there may be some people who are isolated. Others, they feel like they have to, I guess, overwork themselves to, get through their depression. Some people don't like being alone. And so that's why I said for me, some of it was my personality. Like, I like being alone, but then I also had the depression and all of the things. But for some people, it's like, because they're depressed, they have to work through it. They have to, go to work and do this and then do that. And to those people, I honestly would say, slow down. Because sometimes you're like, and I'm not saying slow down to a point of isolation or slow down to a point of withdrawal, but I think that sometimes recognizing what you need is important. Recognizing what it is that you're going through is important, and just taking the time to slow down. And if you have responsibilities, no, you may not be able to press pause on those responsibilities, but also there are certain areas where you may be able to hold out on, and just not always feel the need to overwork yourself. Maybe taking a day off. Look, I don't know, if your job allowed, take a day off. Do something to where you're not always putting so much effort into other people, but also taking care of yourself and showing up for yourself. So just slowing down and recognizing what it is that you need, and seeing yourself, I think.
So we do have a comment, and Bishop Gina said, "Keeping busy so you don't have to deal," and that is so key. Because I know for me, a lot of times I would tell people, stop doing this, don't do that. But I stopped saying that because I realized that sometimes we have to keep busy, and it's not that we're ignoring our mental health, but what keeps us going is that we do have something to look forward to. During that time, going through with my mom, I had to stay busy, because if I stayed home with nothing to do, I probably wouldn't even be here today, because that's how intense it was, right? And so I realized that sometimes we have to keep busy. But one thing you said, Minister, is slow down. So in that keeping busy, there were times that I gave myself permission to just take the day off, and whatever happened, it just happened, kind of thing, right? I gave myself permission to be present in the moment. I gave myself permission. Notice I said I gave myself permission to cry. I gave myself permission to allow y'all to see my emotions, because sometimes we feel like, oh, well, we got to protect everybody from seeing our emotions. No, I gave myself permission to allow y'all to see that, right? Because one of the challenges that I had growing up is I never saw my mother cry. I never saw my older sister cry. So when they started using words like emotion and being sensitive to what was going on, I was like, who are these people? Who are these people? Because I never saw that side, right? And so I realized at that moment that whatever their narrative was, they weren't allowed. They felt like they weren't allowed to show emotion. But I was not going to be that person, because one of the things my therapist said to me when I was early in therapy, she said, you know, you're often saying how you feel like you're not supported and how you're going through things alone. She said, but you never let people really see the real you. You never let people see that you really are going through. That you really are not the strongest person in the batch, that you really are having emotions about what's going on. And so when she said that, I was like, that's true. You know, I didn't. Why? Because I was always in some type of leadership role. And so as leaders, we can't show weakness and vulnerability and all that kind of stuff. No, that's a lie. We need to show that people getting on my nerves, right? But we don't have to stay there. That's the difference. And so I tell people now, being the strong one in the bunch is not a badge of honor. It's actually showing that, I wouldn't say weakness, but it's not a badge of honor, because we don't want you to be the strong person. We want you to be real. And if something gets on your nerves, we want to know that it got on your nerves. If you need help, if financially you're going through some things, we want to know. Now, we may not be able to pay the bills, but at least we can help, or we can get some resources, or whatever the case may be. But if you never show your area of vulnerability, people don't know how to help you. They just don't. And it's not that people are ignoring you and they don't want to help. They don't know how to help, because when they see you, you're always presenting as everything is everything. Right? And so we have to stop doing that, because listen, the Bible tells us that we are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keeper. And so how can we keep one another if we don't know how to support one another and what each other is going through? Okay. So with that said, you know, do we have any more comments? I like the answer that you gave to Kayla. Mother Jackie said, self-care is paramount. Absolutely. I'm the self-care queen. I was thinking the other day, I take real good care of myself. And one thing that y'all will be able to say when that day comes and I close my eyes is that my mother lived life, she enjoyed life, and she took real good care of herself, because self-care is paramount. And the only reason I can show up for everybody else is because I first learned how to show up for myself. And so that's important. We got to first learn how to show up for ourselves. And when we're helping other people, that's an overflow of what is already in us. But if we get filled up, there is no overflow, right? Yes, care is paramount.
I want to add to that, or basically like the last few points that we were talking about, is just, I think it's important, you know, self-care. I think, you know, there are people out there who feel like they have to do things to deal with the depression and with their, you know, all that they're going through. But I also feel like, don't think that depression and anxiety or suicidal thoughts are something to escape. And I think that's where we're not really, you know, healing a lot of the times, because a lot of things are seen as something to escape. You know, if I'm experiencing depression, I have to escape it. If I'm experiencing anxiety, I have to escape it. But sometimes you actually have to sit with it. Like, you actually have to sit with the fact that you're depressed, or sit with the fact that you're anxious. And I think for me, that's one thing that even helps me now as I'm navigating life, is like, sometimes me being sad, the solution is not, you know, go and finding a club to join. Like, sometimes it's actually sitting with my emotions, acknowledging what it is that I'm upset about, acknowledging what it is that's irritating me, acknowledging what it is that, you know, I'm feeling, and then just sitting there, not in a way where I'm soaking in the emotion, but I'm allowing myself to acknowledge it, because once you acknowledge it, then it can fully pass. The moment when your response is escaping it, at some point it's going to come back up, right? Like if I'm depressed today, and then I say, you know what, I'll go join this club, and then every week I'm at this club. At some point, when the club stops, that emotion is going to come back because I haven't actually dealt with it. And so I think, finding that balance of like, okay, taking care of myself, but also helping myself is important, and not always feeling like you have to escape everything, because some things are not to be escaped, but to be worked through and dealt with, and, for you to experience. So I think I would put it that way.
Awesome. So we do have a question. Minister Kayla said, I may have missed this being said, but as ministers, how do we best navigate through understanding the people who may suffer with depression / suicide tendencies, specifically in the church?
Girl, you done got her started. That's part 2. You got her started. That's part 2.
That's part 2. So, are you suggesting we need to do a part 2?
Because that's your whole that's your lane.
Absolutely. So one thing I will say, just so that we can kind of give a brief answer, is one thing we have to acknowledge that it does exist. I tell people all the time, people are not different when they come to church. It's the same people. So those same children who have ADHD, oppositional defiance, behavior issues in school, when they come to your church and your youth programs, guess what? They have those same behaviors. Mm-hmm. So when a person is depressed at home, and Minister Sierra, you're right, don't get me started. Because when a person is depressed at home and then they come to church, they didn't stop being depressed because they walked into the church. All they did was brought that with them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, and I see this more often than not, there are people sitting right in the pews next to you that is going through some heart-wrenching things, but nobody ever notices. And I've actually asked this question when somebody comes to me and they say, oh, let's say I went through a divorce, or I'm going through major marital issues. I'll ask the question, how many of the people that you're in marriage ministry with know? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you 9 out of 10 times I've gotten, nobody knows. And I always say life is not a cookie cutter solution. So we have to take the time, and we have to be able to understand what people are going through, and no, we may not be able to help, but can we help them get a resource that can help? Because we have to stop just coming to church, jumping and shouting, laying hands.
Sensitivity is missing.
Is missing. People are dealing with life issues. People are drug addicts come to the church. People who are depressed come to the church. Preachers, guess what, are depressed. They're listening to everybody else's story. Now they gotta deal with their own stuff. They're depressed. They have issues, and we can't. It's all about education, right? We wanna get a good shout in. Okay, granted, we are into the emotionalism of church, but are we educating our people how to get from one week to the next week? Are we educating them through the word and the application of the word? Because see, we can just give the word, but are we helping people to apply the word to their lives so that they are learning how to navigate through life's challenges, right? From week to week. So I can go so much into that. I just want to kind of highlight, since that was a question on the floor. We have to pay attention to loved ones when there are different signs of depression, absolutely, or withdrawal, because just never know. Absolutely. We can't assume that everybody is good. We can't assume that everybody has the wherewithal to come through. We just can't, right? Yes, life continues and people have to get through life, but we need to check in. I call it wellness checks, Call your girlfriend and say, hey, just don't want nothing, just doing a wellness check.
Mm-hmm.
Call your family members, check in on them. Here's the thing, and this is it in a nutshell. And you know, people may like it, they may not. But we gotta stop being so busy, y'all. We gotta stop being so busy that we are not taking the time to love on our loved ones, check on our loved ones, and be there for our loved ones. Yes, these groups, these organizations, church, I don't know, all the other stuff that we get involved in, work, all those things are nice. We need those things. And I'm not knocking those things. But the people that you say you love, the people that you say are important to you, the people who are valuable to you, stop being so busy that years go by and you ain't even checked in on them. Stop. And let me tell you, you can do all the ministry in the world or all the ministry you think you're bad enough to do, but ministry starts at home. Ministry starts with your loved ones. And so if you are out here being the superhero for everybody else, but the ones that you say you love, the ones in your inner circles, you know, we call everybody sis and bruh and all that kind of stuff, but never take the time to check on each other.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta stop. God is not pleased. He's not pleased. Okay. And you heard it here. He's not pleased. So stop being so busy that we can't pick up a phone and check on. Stop being so busy that in a situation you can't get in your car or transportation or pay for a ride to go check on your people. Stop. It ain't nothing in life is that important that the people you love are being neglected. And I'm talking about friends, sibling, you know, whoever you say is in your circle that you really love. Take the time. Make the time. If you wait for time to say, okay, here's time, that's never going to happen. You got to make the time.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Again, I just want to highlight as we're ending the live that I think sensitivity is just something that we just have to have when we're dealing with people or when we're supporting people through anxiety, depression, mental illness. And as my mom mentioned earlier, it gave me so much insight, but I didn't see it that way, is that, you know, growing up, I was such a hardened person, emotionless, not really tuned into, you know, the things happening around me. Like even growing up, so many things happen in life that I showed no emotion towards. But now that I'm on the other side of the anxiety and depression, I think it did give me a sensitivity to what people are going through, a sensitivity to people's heart. And like, even, and I had a conversation with God recently, like, you know, even when it comes to work, it's not something I chose for myself, but that I feel he placed me at because I'm a mental health case manager. And so now that I'm dealing with so many people with mental illness, it's, you know, I know how to be present even when I don't think that I am. I think the sensitivity has just become a part of who I am. And, you know, participants will say to me all the time, like, you're great. We've never had a case manager like you. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm just sitting here, like, I'm just listening. But, you know, that's sometimes all that people need. You know, sometimes people just want to know that you're there for them, that you show up for them, that you're present, right? Like, I don't go in there speaking and, you know, having long conversations, but one thing I'll always do is ask them how they're feeling, how they're doing. When they need something, I show up and all of the things. And so I think it's just a sensitivity of just like not giving people what you think they need, but what they are saying that they need. And when they say, this is what I need, show up. You know, when they say, this is what I need, you know, at least do that, even if you don't know how to support them. And that's all I just wanted to say, is just be sensitive to the heart of people around you, not just their, you know, circumstance, but what's their feeling, right? Sensitive to their heart. And that's what I, you know, wanted to say.
Awesome. Well, before we close out, I do want to say we are at the end of our live.
Mm-hmm.
Sierra, you were amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing, which is one step above amazing. I want to just announce that we have our mental health conference, our 8th mental health conference coming up on November 21st and 22nd. Now, the conference is November 22nd, and it's being held at the same place it was last year, the Swarthmore Inn. And so our CEO, Minister Kayla, is running a early bird special. She extended the special. So you want to get those tickets because stewardship is the name of the game, okay? And then on the 21st, which is that Friday before, everybody always, one of the comments we always get is that it's not enough time. It's not enough, we don't get to interact with each other. So we have a bowling party on the 21st, which is that Friday. So you want to get your tickets for that. Now, if you can't come on Saturday, but you can come on Friday, you can join us. We want you to get the tickets, but we have a bowling party on Friday night. Saturday is the conference, and we added an hour this year. So we're going from 10 to 3 instead of our normal 10 to 2. The theme for this year is bridging the gap between wisdom and curiosity, which is kind of what we're doing tonight, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want to start bridging this gap. There's a gap between our generation and the younger generations, right? And so everybody's needed on the earth. Everybody's needed in the kingdom. So just like earlier tonight, we had some technical difficulties, and I called my daughter and FaceTimed her, and she walked us through. We need everybody, right? We need those of us that are seasoned for wisdom, and we need you guys for strength and creativity, right? So join us on November 22nd. You can get your tickets. As I said, there is an early bird special. I'm not sure when it ends. The CEO is handling all of that, Miss Kayla. So again, in bridging the gap, I'm learning how to fall back and watch the fruit of my labor. Mm-hmm. So, Minister Sierra, before we close out, do you have anything encouraging you would like to leave the people on tonight?
I want to say, because I think when I give encouragement, it's always hard encouragement, but it's needed. But I think one thing is, again, being sensitive, for those who are supporting someone, be sensitive to what they're going through, their heart, be sensitive. For those experiencing it, again, sit with what you're going through, not in a way to, soak in those moments, but to acknowledge what it is that you're going through. Don't feel that everything has to be, an escape. If you don't know what it is that you're feeling, sometimes just sitting there, you don't have to put a label on every emotion, right? You don't have to put a label on everything that you're going through. Sometimes you just have to sit in it. You have to acknowledge what it is that you're going through. And then, again, just acknowledging what you're going through. And then I don't really want to say, because sometimes the solution is not always finding help, but find help, be around people who you feel as though that can support you through what you're going through, therapy, spirituality, whatever it may be, finding something that can help you and support you through that, but also being true to what you're feeling and being true to, what it is that you're going through, and not feeling that you have to escape it, but, being who you are, I think is, the advice I would give.
Awesome. Excellent advice. I want to just highlight something you said about the help. Getting help, seeking help is not always, we're not saying that it's always professional, mm-hmm. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you gotta always go sit on a couch or talk to them. But the help is reaching out to a trusted friend,
right?
Out to a trusted family member, allowing them to be there for you,
right? Mm-hmm.
So what we're saying is, don't just isolate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're not at a place, and I understand, we understand, if you're not at a place where you actually want to make that call to see a therapist, fine. But make sure you're reaching out to someone to say, hey, I'm a little off. I'm struggling a little bit. And then I want to say to the people who are observing, we have responsibility in this too, because we know our loved ones. We know when they're real jovial or when they're not their normal self. And so we need to ask the question, are you good? Are you okay? Is there something I can help you with? Okay. You want to make sure you're doing your due diligence just to check in. All right. Sometimes I get asked this question, how can we prevent all of this? And it's really not a prevention as much as it's what Sierra drove home tonight as a sensitivity and having the conversations. We have to have conversations like this so that people know this is what you're dealing with. God wants you healed. These are the signs and symptoms. Education is the key. Okay, so we want to leave you all with that tonight. Minister Sierra, you were again amazing. I thank you so much for being so transparent and being willing to share what you overcame, and how God has healed you and blessed you and taken you to a whole nother dimension. So we want to thank our audience. We encourage you to once again share, let your loved ones get the replay. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on all social media platforms. You can also reach me by contacting 833-646-3342, 833-646-3342. Now, let me just say, we have grown, and I am now taking more of a backseat overseer type role. And so when you call that number, that is to the office, but you may not always, let me just tell y'all, everybody can't see me. Okay, but we have some very qualified therapists, okay, that can help you, and that are just as qualified, and I'll even venture out and say probably more qualified, because they got all the new stuff, right? And so, I'm coming from wisdom and what I know, but there are some things that are being taught in curriculums right now that we just didn't get, right? So don't be afraid to venture out and try something new. I would not assign you to somebody that wasn't qualified, okay? And so please know that I'm going on a downward slope, but my daughters here are taking things and taking it to new levels and new heights. So you can get seen, but everybody can't see me. All right. We love you guys. Thank you so much. You guys have been a great audience. If there's something you wanted to know that we didn't answer or we didn't get to tonight, please feel free to reach out to us privately. You can inbox or contact me privately, and we definitely can talk about your question and help you get new insight. We love you guys, and you can't do a thing about it. God bless you.
Bye-bye. Love you guys.